Tag TV and Tag Radio. Be seen and heard by both technology users and technology producers throughout the state of Georgia and around the world. Low cost, big benefits, powerhouse online branded video and audio has arrived. Tag TV, Tag Radio, there's a lot more to know. Did you know that Georgia's second largest city is Columbus? That's right, Columbus, Georgia. And it also ranks as the fourth largest metropolitan area in the state as well. 100 miles south of Atlanta, it earned the ranking of fourth on the 100 best U.S. cities to live by Best Life magazine. Nearby Fort Benning employs 41,000 employees, and financial industry leaders like TSYS and Synovus, along with global insurance giant Aflac, top a long list of innovative enterprise and entrepreneurial companies that make its economy strong and bustling. In fact, Columbus is now experiencing one of the greatest and most accelerated periods of growth the city has ever seen. Greetings, everyone. It's Friday, August 23rd, 2013, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantello. I'm your guest host, Frank Baia. Columbus, Georgia's future is about to arrive, and the Technology Association of Georgia is already there. That's right. The Columbus Charter Chapter of TAG is already stimulating community, advancing education, and promoting networking events. The Columbus TAG Chapter mission is educating, unifying, promoting, and influencing Georgia's technology community in the greater Columbus area. Up to the Tech Talk, Columbus TAG Charter Chapter member Lucas Shaffer. Lucas leads a team of professionals at Stand and Stretch, an interactive marketing strategies company that develops and manages web, social, and mobile technologies. Stand and Stretch was the area's first company of its kind, established in 2010. Along with being a technology community leader in Columbus, Lucas is an early adopter of social media and is a dedicated blogger. His blogs have been syndicated on socialmediatoday.com, reaching millions of viewers each month. From a small mill town on the western edge of Georgia on the Chattahoochee River to become the state's second largest city and an economic development engine impacting 7 surrounding counties, 10 cities, and 2 states. It's time you learn more about Columbus and the TAG chapter that makes you feel like your family, because as a TAG member, that's just what you are. As we speak with TAG Columbus Charter Chapter member and head of the rapidly growing Stand and Stretch interactive marketing agency, Lucas Shaffer. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Lucas, welcome to Tech Talk.
Hey, thanks for having me.
For those that have come through the site and had an opportunity to not only learn a little bit about your background, but actually see your photograph, I think they'll see that you obviously are pretty cutting edge. I'm guessing those are Google glasses. Are you? How long have you been wearing those?
I just recently got back from San Francisco about 3 weeks, so I've had them for about 3 or 4 weeks now.
So tell me, how does it work? I mean, do you really enjoy seeing things simultaneously like that, or how does it?
It is more of reporting hardware, more something to be more reactive than proactive. So it's a heads-up display of things that might be happening in your Google Life, for example, Gmail, text messaging, other items that might be important like Twitter and Facebook.
I think the obvious evolution of ubiquitous connectivity, that's only the beginning of the kind of equipment or tools or even clothing that I guess we'll experience in the future as time evolves. Let's talk a little bit about what I think is an extremely interesting name, Stand Up and Stretch. Tell us a little bit about the origin of that.
Yeah, Stand and Stretch is basically a culmination of positive action terms. When we were sort of vetting names for our blog in the very initial stage of our business, we were trying to make sure people had a positive mentality when they visited our website.
So, well, I have to admit that Stand Up and Stretch had exactly that impact on me when I first saw the name. It put a smile on my face, and I just think it was very creative and very unique. I think it's representative of a mosaic thinker for sure. Let's explore. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, I was going to say it definitely sparks conversation. It was probably one of the early stage marketing devices that allowed me to sort of extend my elevator speech for quite some time.
Well, let's talk a little bit about reaching out and getting, an elevator speech on a broader scale, and that's talking about the geographic area, Columbus. Maybe from your personal perspective, go into what you think is important that businesses focus on as far as the kind of technologies that are recognized out of Columbus. Certainly, I think anybody in the fintech industry is aware of what's happened there, but maybe explore some other situations.
Yeah, well, we have a very interesting environment in Columbus. We have two major technology businesses, Total Systems and Aflac, and they have a really great pool of resources of technology and engineering. Unfortunately, we try to focus right now on trying to develop small businesses, especially around technology. So when that kind of comes to fruition, we tend to lack from a strong pool of candidates because they typically get good-paying jobs at TSYS and Aflac and other bigger companies that are around the area. So it's, we're trying to cultivate that type of focus for Columbus in general, just trying to generate technology as a buzzword, looking at some of the incentives that are based around Georgia.
You've got some great academic institutions that are drawing a lot of young people there, I'm sure, as well. I think obviously the broadband initiative and some of the outreach is gradually getting it to the point where almost location doesn't matter. Certainly I would think because of the two organizations you mentioned with Synovus and Aflac, broadband infrastructure and high-speed connectivity has probably been there for quite some time. But
yeah,
go ahead.
No, you're right on board with that. I think we definitely have the opportunity and the landscape here for it. Cultivating the small business part of it is sort of what Stand and Stretch is about and what we're trying to cultivate. So,
is there incentives to do, as far as beyond some of the obvious ones is the extremely great quality of life? I certainly am familiar with Columbus. I love the new downtown development and the Riverwalk and some of the things that have been going on in terms of just greater quality of life. It's always been a great part of Georgia, but I think it's getting even better with each passing year. But from your perspective, what are incentives do startups have to move there?
That's a good question. It's young and vivacious. We've just launched a urban whitewater course that is running 15, 20 trips a day down what could be touted as the longest urban whitewater rafting course in the world. So it goes right down by our Broadway, down our downtown, our uptown area. Outside of the cultural theme of fun and sporty, one of the incentives that you have to bring, your startup to Georgia is things like investgeorgia.org and the angel investment tax liability credit. There's great seed funding available for tech startups in Georgia, and Columbus is a great place to live. So you combine the backed legislation with a fun-loving, family-driven, oriented. I grew up here, so I'm completely on board with it. So trying to bring a company here and understanding the culture, utilizing the government incentives, it's a great place to be right now.
Well, you've covered some of it even from a granular standpoint, but also in a broader spectrum, the attitude and the approach of even the name, but the organization, Stand Up and Stretch. Maybe go for our listeners into a little bit more detail about how does it represent a more focused approach to technology business?
Yeah, we are definitely, I think, in a great spot. We are a business that helps businesses, and that is just very fortunate for us. The opportunity to help other businesses stems from technology-based work. So we are a part of the drive that are taking the businesses that are traditionally mom and pop all the way through mid-sized to enterprise-level businesses in this area. We're bringing them to updated online marketing. So it's all the things that you would talk about. I know Tag is very out there with this talk, and so we try to bring those opportunities to businesses who might not have had that chance. So our focused approach is to provide technology resources at a very comparable rate in our area and allow them to utilize these technology resources to help grow their businesses.
Has the expansion of the military overall impacted? Wasn't there trying to remember now, but a couple of years ago, one of the bigger stories was the the closing of some of the military bases and the expansion of some of the locations in that general area. Have you seen any spillover from that?
You know, that's a good question. It's very hard to learn and market the military environment for us. I think for me, when I'm looking at it, it does require more marketing and more advertising churn, because people come and they stay at Fort Benning for, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then they move on. It's tough having it being focused as a training center in some sense. I know they've broadened that scope, but for us, when we target military, we know and understand that it's an ongoing movement of people coming in and out of the area. So we look at the military as it's growing, and there's some impact in our community. It's very definite, but I don't know if we saw the impact that we were estimating. I know I saw a lot of reports on just the total economic development, impact, and it didn't. I saw the aftermath of BRAC, what the results were and what the actuality became, and I don't think we saw the impact that we were hoping for. But there's always a definite interest on having the military be a part of a lot of what goes on in Columbus.
Well, the reason I brought it up was even from the traditional sense, if that's the right word, that the military has been involved in research and development and a lot of technological evolution. Obviously everybody thinks of the Israeli military and some of the technologies they've created in a whole spectrum of enterprise, not just DOE-type situations. And so I was thinking that in terms of an expansion to the overall base in Columbus, that may have played some role in terms of innovation and entrepreneurial opportunities. But talk a little bit about the changes that you think need to be met in order to cultivate engineering and technology-based jobs.
That's a good question. There's a lot that we're probably not connecting in Columbus right now. We work with the Columbus State Career Center, and they do a great job in providing resources for job hunting. One of the things that came to me after a period of time was entrepreneurialism, and we have a very diverse computer science department. We have a very high-end center for those people being educated by that program. One of the things I'd like to try to do, and I know how we could focus on that, is cultivate relationships to entrepreneurs inside of tech business. And just a quick idea would be something similar to hosting a Shark Tank, where entrepreneurs are looking at product development as far as software and technology and engineering. So I think we just need to be more abridged at looking at connecting entrepreneurialism and the computer science departments.
What about Georgia State University, though? Go into it a little bit more in terms of how does it play a role in terms of what you're talking about, and even, as you just mentioned, the focus on tech entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's good. It's Columbus State University. We have resources that are unlike many other areas. Our computer science program is very defined, and it's well seated. It's been around for about 15 years. It's funded by Total Systems here, or not funded, but it's called Total Systems Department of Computer Science. How about that? And the idea is that we have these great resources inside of that program, and we're able to create engineers, create computer scientists, software developers, interface designers. We also have 3D modeling and animation tracks for graduation. So that kind of means is what's been growing, and you see it with a dedicated building now at Columbus State University. So there's a big drive to make sure that there's these technology people that are coming out. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, we're not getting enough into the private sector. We're not pulling them and saying, hey, you have a pretty much secure job at business A and business B, but do you think that you would want to create the next Instagram? Or would you like to be a part of a mobile app that changes the world? There's these ideas that I think we need to drive into an entrepreneurship program and cultivate that interest.
That's kind of an interesting perspective. So the more that we have this conversation, the more I'm gathering that there's a lot of talent, but the talent isn't necessarily driven from an entrepreneurial standpoint. I know you mentioned the Shark Tank. I mean, that's certainly representative of drawing in a mentality to understand some of the capabilities that that the community presents. But the other side of it is what you're bringing up now, and that is taking that talent and inspiring them with a greater entrepreneurial spirit, so that they bloom where they're planted, kind of a thing. And that's an interesting challenge, because one would think, it's almost potentially a legacy issue as it related to the attraction of people coming there because of what you said from our earlier conversation. The established industry drew technicians, drew programmers, drew people that got their genuinely were satisfied, got their passions fulfilled by just doing programming and developing ideas or continuing to expand on existing technologies, rather than to look for innovation and drive new businesses on an independent standpoint.
Georgia being a place where we build amazing engineers and computer scientists, and then we train them at TSIS, and then they get the Fortune 500 experience that makes their resumes look great, and then they get recruited by firms in Atlanta and San Francisco. It's like kind of watching for the past 2 decades our brightest technologists leaving the area because we're not cultivating that type of culture here.
And that's an obstacle, no doubt, but what a great opportunity, because that's something that a solution can be found. And it sounds to me that you're on the trail of sort of a CSI kind of a thing to figure it out and find out what the solution is. If you had, in an ideal world, and unfortunately we're quickly running out of time, but in an ideal world over the next 3-5 years, what would you like to see happen in Columbus?
Well, a more diverse selection of technology businesses starting from the ground floor. I think when you think about entrepreneurs and technologists when they're getting done with school, the biggest frightening fear is, I just need to get a job. None of them think about the opportunities of going into business for themselves. And I think that I'd like to, over the next 3 to 5 years, continue to inspire young technology professionals to look at Columbus as a viable place to have their startup live.
Well, I think Lucas would stand and stretch in some of the concepts and beliefs that you're doing with your activities in support of what the Technology Association is trying to do in that area. It sounds to me like you're well on the path. Thank you so much for taking time out of your hectic schedule to join us for a few minutes today on Tech Talk.
Thank you. No problem.